get there. And then once you're done with that, we'll open the floor to questions.
Sure. Thanks for having me. First and foremost, I hope what I have to say is beneficial to anybody. I don't like wasting my breath. It's not something I do very often. And I don't think that's going to be the case here, but yeah, I hope you do get a ton out of it. Um, yeah, name Sean, live in Memphis, Tennessee. Have since I was 5. Uh, let's see, anything fun or unique? Not so much. Like I started out in high school, got a late interest in learning. I'm the guy who could continually just be in college because I just loved getting information so much. But there's really not a fiscally responsible way to do that, right? So, yeah, late in high school, I found the knack for it, got into college, met my wife, said, you know what, I got to actually make money now. I can't just keep doing this. So jumped into something I thought was pretty cool in college, which was C++, right? I like the Aristotelian logic. Is it true? It false? Then you got code flow and then data structures. So some really fun things. I found that it just worked. So I went into that field, had some fun, really fun times. Probably still my most memorable time in life was working for a home audio video uh, place. And we were able to do some really cool things, like working with customers, right? I found that understanding what they wanted and being in their houses and making things happen for them just gave me a lot of gratification. Um, but let's see. Yeah, I still needed more money, right? So that's just where it took me. Unfortunately, a lot of places won't give you more money unless you leave them. And I think there's a lot going on lately where people are like, yeah, but it actually costs us more to lose a person than it does to just give them more money. So thanks be to that awareness. I think, right, and I'll go ahead and turn it over after this. Something that keeps me grounded is just kind of a little tiny mantra in the back of my head that connects me to other people as well as to my past, and that is life is a journey out of poverty. Now that's really reductionistic and it's really simplistic and it's probably even naive if we don't define what two words are, right? Like, what is a journey? And then what is poverty? So it's kind of self-explanatory that a journey is like getting from one place to the next. And in life, I think we can all agree that I am not the same person I was last year, this time. I'm not the same person I was born, right? Because I've learned a lot. But it's a journey, right? And if I can approach life as it's a journey and I can see other people at different points in time in their journey, then the questions of right and wrong really kind of shift focus and turn into there is this process with which I approach life, right? Like, how can I identify where a person is in their journey? Well, that's cool because it kind of fits into this other side of things too. Out of poverty. So poverty, what is poverty, right? Like again, really reductionistic here, but um, it's a lack of resources, right? Like most of us think poverty and they think, wow, this person doesn't have money. This person's living on the street. This person's homeless. But I argue, right? Like if you're new to the country, you're probably in social poverty too, right? Like you don't have a network of people that you maybe had back in your home country. It could be simply just like I was born into a place where my family moved around a lot. My dad was in the Air Force, so yeah, I didn't have that. But when I settled down, I started, branching out into a network. It could be resources, right? In the sense of I don't have the finances. I don't have the book smarts. I don't have whatever that thing is that a person is lacking is clearly a place of poverty, although it's not, right, necessarily financial in nature. But I think ultimately what it came down to me too was experience, right? Getting that experience, being comfortable with where I was plugged in to get that experience. Did it meet my needs at that point in time? Um, and getting to that place. Now, um, that's in a nutshell what I meant by life is a journey, right? I'm on it, you're on it, um, out of poverty, which is, yeah, ultimately I've got my exit plan, right? Like sell it for a huge margin. That's easy, but what is my inroad there? What am I going to sell? Is that going to be my time, my effort, my energy? Is that going to be a product that I create? Is that going to be what? Who knows, right? Um, so what does that look like? In the past, I'll just give you an example. Same thing that I shared with Dana was uh, finding something that I could talk about intelligibly and giving that a go. It's just a learning experience. So coming out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, or rather coming out of high school. Crap, even in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, which is why I dropped out. Um, because I just couldn't maintain it. But I started getting into all these different things that I found enjoyable, um, and learning slowly what I liked and didn't like based on experience. So when I do have the mentorship program start up at the beginning of the semester, I usually ask my mentees, my proteges, right? Like, what is it that you really enjoy? Because first, if you're going to want to make something with a technology backend, you're going to need to be the SME, right? The subject matter expert of something. So if one of the guys was saying, "Hey, I love soccer," great, cool, you like soccer. So come up with an app about it. I don't care if there's 6 of them, right, on the App Store. Just come up with what this looks like, because I want to give you some experience. So the gentleman basically came up with it's a scheduling service, right? Given you have 4 fields, these are how teams are ordered. This is, the days in which they play. Can we introduce some algorithm to switch the teams around so they don't play each other more than once or twice? So once he had the idea, right, what does that look like in the data? What does that look like on the server? Fortunately, at the point in time, I had uh, a free subscription to some stuff in Azure. So we just walked through that. We built out a database. We built out what does a website look like, and it wasn't beautiful. It didn't have to be, right? Like this was all an exercise for us. But when it came out in the end, right, he had all this experience of like, God, I love the database, right? Like front end design, that sucks. I really am not good at that, And if you want to go on with that and you want to become super awesome at that, great, fine. But understanding like how am I wired only comes through the experience. So said a different way, experience is something we don't have until we don't need it anymore, right? But fortunately we can look at things like, hey, I got a flat tire. Well, YouTube's here, right? So how do I change a flat tire? Oh, easy. Okay, I get it. Um, so there's that. But the process really is learning, learning what worked for other people, learning yourself, getting connected to those resources, and that is ultimately I get ourselves out of the poverty that we find ourselves in. Um, so that's really high, right? Talked enough, talked a lot. I'd like to turn it back over to you, just to see where you guys are at.
So yeah, folks coming in, if you have questions, you're welcome to raise your hand, unmute yourself, or put them in the chat. I'll be moderating that. And while questions start to come in, Sean, I think it would be interesting for folks to hear, you are currently mentoring computer science students, right, at the University of Memphis. I know it's one of several things that you do. I know that one of the big questions on people's minds right now is the impact of AI, right? Like What are your thoughts on that? What are you telling the students that you're mentoring, or what are you seeing in the industry, in your company or at work? Yeah, how do you see this impacting the industry, especially folks that are just getting started in it?
Sure. I think it's kind of one-sided, right? If you're going at, yes, we can get computers through large language models to tell us certain things given, right? There's a plethora of information on how to code. Um, but I think we're missing the most important part, which is like the context of everything that's happened in the past, right? Like for a specific company, for a specific thing. As a human, we can jump in, we can sense power vacuums, we can see people have left code in certain ways. And largely that's just the name of the game. We're humans. But I think without context, AI is going to create some really crappy, unmaintainable trash, frankly. It will help you, right? In many things. It is great for, we just had a hackathon here, and one of our big things was like customer service, right? Like call in, it takes me forever to get an answer. Can't I just search on this? But based on our customer service results, we're able to, you know, train our gosh, train our chatbots to use the data that we've already accumulated to basically regurgitate it back out. And if there is something that someone has not seen yet, they can feel free to call in. So in senses like that, it is a tool, but to replace a human and the context that we are so quick to learn, or even ask questions about that there is no documentation, right? Um, I don't think that's going anywhere. That's powerful. I think even in my previous job in transportation, it's just there's a lack of resources in terms of drivers. So that's kind of why we wanted to go towards self-driving trucks, electric trucks. It's all about resources, right? Again, poverty and resources. There's that trade-off. Um, so it's a great question, but I don't think it's as simple as AI is just going to replace wholeheartedly, um, hands down, all developers.
Thank you for that. We have a question from Rizwan. They ask, is having a degree necessary to become a developer?
No. No, absolutely not. You don't have to have a degree to become a developer. One of the companies that I love and am trying to support is called Persevere, where they're basically inmates, right, who are trying to learn development as well. Because if you look at recidivism, like, hey, I'm in physical poverty, right? And when I go back home, like I'm just being encouraged to go back in. Basically, why? Because I can't get out of here, right? Food deserts, there's a lot going on there. But if we can get a paycheck in this person's hands, like that's the first step, right? And there's so many cyclical things like, hey, why don't you get a job? Because I don't have a car. Well, why don't you have a car? Because I don't have a job. What the heck, right? Um, so breaking those chains is part of it, and that's where I find myself in the journey too. Is my journey now is to help people along in their journey, as a manager, as a mentor, because I think for folks who have been given a lot, much is expected. Um, and just keeping that mindset. So coming back, no, you don't have to have one. How much can you feed yourself? Do you know where to go to feed yourself? Um, and then making a practice of it, hacking yourself. There's a great book called Atomic Habits. I forget the gentleman's name. Um, but it's more than just saying like, hey, I'm going to lose weight this year, or hey, I'd like to work out more this year. It's actually hacking yourself to where like there's some really cool proven techniques to make things a habit. It's just small things, right? Um, to get you in that direction. So I'd encourage you to pick that book up just to set up those habits, um, and make things happen. So you're exposing yourself to what algorithms, what techniques, um, you need. Also understanding history too, because I found that a lot of people, myself included at one point in time, just want to jump onto the next best thing. But really, in the businesses that I work for, FedEx, International Paper, even Zip, right? Like everybody wants to jump into microservices, but that's not always the point, right? uh, Microservices answers a bunch of questions that came before it. So at a place like International Paper, where it's like 100 years old, we're very established in our ways and kind of sort of waterfall instead of agile. We find ourselves like trying to answer questions that are light years ahead of where we're at right now. Um, so there's some other tips, just thinking out of the box here.
Thank you. Got some more questions coming in. This is from Chris. How would you recommend going about gaining experience in software development without a degree? And then how much experience do you need before you can get a good paying job?
Um, yeah, I would say everybody wants to jump into like FANG companies. So there's part of it that is understanding what data algorithms are, uh, sorting mechanisms, this, that, and the other. But again, I think it's very one-sided. It's kind of one-dimensional. And in the same question, like, hey, is AI going to replace us? It could replace the coding aspect, but it's not going to replace like the part where it takes a person's intuition, like human intuition, which is the better way, which is the way that's going to get this project delivered on time. Can I put this in there with some comments around it? Can I place another, uh, you know, task on my backlog later to come back and clean this tech debt up? Um, I mean, really, it comes down to, yes, feeding yourself. There's a ton of newsletters out there. Some of them are kind of, as I've gone in here, like they're very simplistic, and you can't believe everything you see on LinkedIn or YouTube or something. And sometimes it's answering the really low level questions. But I think again, being a human first is going to get you the job. Understanding, reading through like what is the question being asked here. Um, those are going to get you the job. Uh, Being good at development is a thing, right? But again, if we're talking about which is quicker, like bubble sort or quick sort, which is less memory, consumption, those are terms of scalability, but most companies don't run into those problems. You're talking about, again, your FANG companies. So if you're shooting high, yeah, something like Leet Code is going to help you get accustomed to those algorithms and things. But I find just being able to think empathetically, like customer first, product first, um, being a human first, right, is going to give you that. Um, so it's kind of also a self hack. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you so much. And for those not looking at the chat, Devin chimed in. What he touched on in his introduction: build a project, struggle, figure out how to do it, build, build, build. I just wanted to call that out because that's a pretty good answer as well.
Yeah.
The next question is from Toba Chukwu. What advice would you give someone struggling with imposter syndrome?
Um, I think you're in the best freaking place you can be if you're struggling with imposter syndrome. So is it because my question back would, because you don't actually have the chops, or is it because you're just unsure to show off your work? Can someone fill me in there?
So I can answer that. This is coming from a career change. I'm basically coming from education, although with a strong background in math. But coding has been something I've literally ran from throughout my college career. So now it's kind of not really trusting that my work can amount to what the professional work might look like.
Right. Right. So me and my son's 17 and he's doing some stuff in high school and he's like, "Yeah, Dad, like we're learning about matrices." Great. Like in what context? And he's like, "Hey, here's, he's talking about game design, right? Like here's your triangles and you're doing all your polys and splines and different fun things like that." I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool, but you can also use it as like a data construct." Like I think about Excel spreadsheet. He's like, "I don't know what Excel is." So, well, okay, never mind spreadsheets. That's an advanced topic, but like I think probably you're in one of the best situations because it is so math driven, right? Um, Also, it's a journey, right? Again, if you can think of it in your mind as a journey, there's the math aspect, there's things I know and there's things I don't know, and bringing those two pieces together. Um, Also praying, right, for folks who have the uh, similar mindset, understanding like, hey, this person is not as far along as their journey in their journey as they are or should not even should be. There is no should in a journey, right? Like you should have been in St. Louis already, right? Like there's none of that. It's yeah, like I ran into a snowstorm in Nashville and St. Louis is coming, right? That's it. Um, but yeah, the more exposure you can get to it, just being patient with yourself, and then asking for the help. I mean, some people, I'm not going to tell you to get out there. It really, it's all context, right? Like the person that you're working for, the people that you're working with, um, being an agent of change, saying, hey, you know what, guys, there's a time and place for this. Code reviews is a great place to ask about things. Some places code reviews are broken, some places code reviews are great. Um, you know, I think the blameless culture, if you haven't checked it out, go out and just Google blameless culture. That's something they've got at Zip. But we're going to talk about the problems, not the people, right? We're going to talk about things on a whole and not so much like go and attack people for it. Because we encourage mentorship. I'm both a mentor and a protege where I'm at because DevOps to me, right? Like what those folks do is black magic. I'm just so wow. So I'm filling my knowledge tanks in that space. But yeah, that was a really long answer. And hopefully I answered your question or gave you some help.
Great, thank you. Moving on to another question from Grant. Grant asked, Sean, do you have any information on Salesforce admins?
Oh, no. I'm I know where Salesforce fits. I know about their APIs. It's always been kind of a black box to me, like a third-party integration. I'm sorry, I'm not the best person to ask there.
No worries. Moving on. Next question's from Tanima. What resources did you use to learn how to code?
Um, so first, let's I back in the day bought a bunch of books and knocked out some of my Microsoft certifications. Um, Again, I had one class in junior college about it. So it was just C++, started digging into it, made the mistakes. That's it. Anything lately has been coming from like Pluralsight or Udemy. Those are great places. Also, their sites getting out into LinkedIn. They've got some really interesting things there. And I like to read what other people are saying too. And depends on what language you're learning, right? Like if it's .NET, Java, Python, what have you. So that kind of tweaks my answer a little bit too. But for me, because I've been more in the .NET stack recently, it has been places like Pluralsight, LinkedIn, and Yeah, that's where I go.
Thank you. Let's see here. Oh, this might be worth just calling out. Rizwan had talked about imposter syndrome, I believe, and said showing off my work is probably what makes me most uneasy because I feel like I'd be judged negatively by people. So, Sean, you're working with students who are learning. Do you have any thoughts for folks that are struggling with wanting to learn, but being maybe embarrassed to show what they're up to because they don't know what they don't know?
Yeah. Hey, so, hmm, I think imposter syndrome it's an emotional thing. Um, and hacking yourself to become less emotional, more scientific is probably sounds so easy to do. But right, like there's ownership in it because like, hey, I just did this crazy thing. Um, and if you look at like I think his name's John Cricket, he gives you things to do, like, hey, create a DNS lookup out of Go, right? So now you're going to do this, and now you're going to understand these complex topics like DNS and the Go language. Um, but it's I don't know. It's a mind thing, right? This is how I did it. Um, Crap, I've done stuff, and I go back and look at my code. And I'm like, that was just dumb. Like that was so naive of me, right? Um, but it works. Is there a problem with that? Right? No, there's no problem. And again, that's like, hey, you can see like this is where somebody is in their journey. Where do you want to present that? That's kind of the question I would ask is, do I want to put this big post like right in the middle of all these really experienced developers? Or, right, like look at what they're doing. Just refine it, right? Like that's I think first and foremost, us as developers are scientists, right? That's what the agile process is. If you haven't looked into it, it is making code in a scientific method. This is what I want it to do, right? Going ahead, developing it, testing your hypothesis, and then doing it in front of the product and saying, hey, did this work? Did this meet your needs? And if not, right, instead of doing it, working for 2 months and then publishing it, right? We're trying to deliver this as quick as possible. Sometimes daily if you're Google, but at least every 2 weeks, to where we're coming back and we're shortening those feedback loops so we can get it right. Um, so, right, like there's a bit of it everywhere, and it's being comfortable enough with yourself um, when that happens to say, hey, look, either this is what I gave you, or I can also redo it. It's about value. It's about goodness. I'm trying to phrase it in such a way that's hmm, it's a tricky question. It's a tricky question because it's subjective. It's a me thing, right? Like I want to own it, but I also don't want to be rejected for it. Yeah. Did that help?
Feel free to chime in if that was helpful or not. If not, we'll move on to the next question. Okay, this is from Peter. When it comes to navigating the job search, how can one effectively handle the hurdles posed by entry-level positions demanding 3 to 5 years of experience? And Sean, if you have any thoughts on the job market for entry-level, participants and job seekers, I'm sure that they would be very welcome because
Hmm.
it's a weird job market out there right now.
It really is. Um, it really is. I mean, I've got friends who yeah, lost their jobs, 6 months ago. And it's weird. It really is. Like, hey, everybody needs people, but no one's willing to step out there. I think there's a couple of things behind this. One, macroeconomically, like where are we? We just came off of, I think, kind of a gluttonous stage, meaning like all the big folks started swallowing up talent, taking that talent away from more established companies. Um, and they probably weren't as excited with what they got as they expected. So when everything kind of corrected recently, well, last year, over the past 2 years, probably, right? Like people are coming off of this going, what the heck? Weird numbers with labor, with cost of resources, wars. Like there's so many weird things affecting the job market now. And I'm probably falling on deaf ears because you're like, yeah, no, I get it. Move on. That's where I think the process comes in, right? Like there's fear. There's probably unmet expectations. You're probably told, "Hey, do the science, do the tech thing. Get in here. There's plenty of money. The water is fine." In reality, it was like, yeah, that's true, but like we're still undergoing a lot of things. Trusting the process. Feed yourself. Feed others. The things that you're given. In a way, I'm also thinking like keep track of what you're doing, what you're saying, in whether that's blogs, like personal stuff, right? You're asking about how can I, not necessarily this person, but what we've talked about before. How do I get my code out there? Making blogs. This is what I learned today. Blop. Right there. It doesn't have to be like, hey, here's a working something or other. Um, but just keeping track of that yourself um, is a good way to keep things in focus. Learn, share your learnings with others, have other people give you constructive criticism there. um, Doing those things either daily, weekly, like keep doing it, keep trusting the process. um, it will change. Where do you want to go for looking? It occurred to me just recently, we've got folks that are software developers and test, and it was really clear that this one person in particular who's been here probably a year probably knows more about the system than some of our most senior developers. There's a lot of software developer jobs in test, right? It's what do you want? Do you want to make ends meet? Do you want to jump into FANG companies? Do you want to work remotely? Right? Like, what are the things? Again, this is a subjective question that I can't answer for you. But if you were to write all these different things down on paper, right, and like prioritize them, like I need to work remote, right? Okay, fine. So what are you willing to go for? Is like a contract thing good for you? Shoot, start with contracts. That's a great place to start. Um, Software developers and test, SDET is what you'd see that. That's a great place to get in. You might not be doing a ton of coding, but you're getting the experience along the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, to see what are the things that need to be met. We're using BDD, right? So like Gherkin, some really fun things there, but you can take that and stick that into a CI/CD pipeline. Because if you don't have tests, right, all you're doing really is pushing garbage out fast. But yeah, there's some kind of hacks to the industry there. Otherwise, just don't give up. Please don't give up. You got to trust the process.
I think that dovetails nicely into the next question from Kalpana. I'm getting worried about my age to start my career. Everything just scroll for me. There it is. Do I get a job is a big question, which makes me feel, it's hard to focus on work or on coding. And I guess, the underlying question there, Sean, is ageism in tech, which I think is a present, and real concern for people entering the workforce a little bit later, especially if they're switching careers or maybe coming back from raising a family. Is it even possible to get a job in tech, after 35 or whatever it might be? Do you have any thoughts on that? Is that something you can speak to?
I certainly feel it. Yeah, because when most people are starting up, I'm starting to slow down. I don't think anybody's immune to feeling less than, right? Especially when we compare ourselves to others, like comparing my weaknesses to other people's strengths, right? We're all going to turn out on the bottom of those things. I don't think it's ever too late. I think it really is tuning into what is, shoot, I don't want to say what's realistic, because some people, right, could short sell themselves and work for nothing or something like that. That's not what I'm saying here, but like, what is, where is a person, where is a company looking for a traveler like myself on this journey to someplace in tech, aligning my expectations to where their expectations are. Everybody's probably like, yeah, I already knew that too. Like, don't apply for a senior job when I'm not a senior. Duh. Um, that's a great question, and so idiosyncratic to where a person is at any one point in time. I'd say go for it. Frankly, just go for it. Scientist, right? Scientific method. If I went through the interview, they obviously liked something about it. If I didn't do great on the interview, what did I not do well on? Where can I change in the future? Um, I hope that's enough.
Thank you. Next question's from Chris. If you're, oh no, it just
Can,
rolled in. Where did it go?
can I ask one question?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but this is Kalpana Marga. Actually, from 2019, I'm keep on learning the skills like data science, data engineering, and software development lifecycle, like SDET, testing, QA, automation, Python automation, as well as Java automation. But for applying for job, it's really difficult for me because of my age and my career gap. I did in
Mhm.
masters in computer applications 20 years ago, but problem is to apply for the job, my resume won't pick it up. First problem.
Mm,
If I tell the truth, if I didn't tell the truth, uh, I'm getting scared to do that.
I see.
Uh, but I did coding, like in Coursera and EDX and everything. I'm good. I'm not very good, but I can good at for basics.
Mhm.
Yeah, now I don't know where I had to start my career still. It's a big question for me. Start in QA or data analyst or data engineer. But I have skills for everything. Not fine and tuned, but I have basic skills. If I get at an opportunity, I can learn like like a lead code or anything. I can practice it and I can get easily. I'm looking for an opportunity.
Yeah, sure. So what have you done in that gap, in those gap years?
Actually, I have two daughters. First, when I moved here, I don't have an H1 visa to work.
Mhm.
After that, I got kid, and single job in SFO is a little bit challenging for paying for even daycare and everything at that moment. And after my daughter got 5 years, I started to looking for job, and I got some internship. And I went for San Francisco for the job. Morning 6 o'clock to evening 8 o'clock. I have to come. I need to come back for the internship position. It's very challenging at that moment. Then I got another kid again 5 years. Then
Understood.
two, 2019, I'm relieved for my kids from 5 years and they started school. Then I started to studying for different courses and applying for the jobs for the small like internships and everything. Most of them is not picked up. Last year, not last year, this year only first here my resume was picked up through IBM. I was first amazed, and I went for the interview. I took for the coding challenges, but still I'm not good at that moment because I didn't prepare very well for the data structures coding.
Mhm.
uh, then I didn't select it, but first time I felt like okay, at least I got one interview.
Mhm.
It made me feel like I have to apply for another job, and I applied for IRS last month, and I got for the start a position. Still, it's not finalized yet, but still, I got tentative offer, but it's not the software job. Yeah, but I'm looking for the software job. At least I feel a little bit good, but still, only one interview is not enough for us, right?
Right.
For
Right.
the
Right.
first interview, getting a job is not that easy for me.
Sure. So,
Thank you
you
for
know,
your time. I'm so sorry I took more
yeah, no
time.
worries, no worries. It helps, and that's where I'm like the trouble with the questions, right? Is I don't know exactly where anybody is, and that's really it. Is like spending time with folks and understanding where they are in their journey is part of giving the good advice. I would say just thinking off the cuff, right? Like what could get you more experience? Everybody asks different questions. I found that in the same way that like everybody's idea of an architect is slightly different. Everybody's idea of what a senior developer is, right? So a senior developer in a FANG company is going to be the uber nerd, right? Like can tell you all of the design patterns for, making X happen. So, are you going to apply to a FANG company if that's not your strong suit? If you're more, front end, back end, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, where do you want to be? Those are the questions that I can't answer for you. Um, but knowing where you want to be, there are ways, right? This is all about experience and adding experience to myself. Like I don't like front end design. I like hanging out with the customers. I like understanding what they need. So maybe I'm just a product person, right? Which is still in tech. It just doesn't happen to be that you're the one doing the development. So are you looking for a job or are you looking for a job specifically as a developer? So right there, you're kind of defining who or what you're going to be doing, as opposed to being in tech, because manager jobs, people who can listen in and who can see all the tech happening and say, hey, in the past, right, like this is how we've done things, coordination, like they make good money too. It's not just developers. But those developers make a lot of money because they're doing things at scale, because they know those design patterns and those algorithms. So it's not all free lunch. It's not just something you jump out there and score that 200K a year job. Um, but where are you remarketing yourself? What I was thinking of you, specifically Kalpana, was because you've been like a mother for a good part of that gap, is coming up with something that could have helped you, right, during that time. Right, like it's giving you some skills. It's giving you what would it be, like a scheduler? I don't know. Or some kind of app that it would be really helpful if I had this, right?
Yeah,
Is it
as a mother, I think at that time my daughter was nut allergy. Then first I was researching too much about data science, towards data science for allergies, and I want to try to write for genome code,
okay?
but it's a little bit challenging for me for genome code because I don't have any knowledge in biology.
Yeah, I mean, hey, wherever you are, like everybody's going to be different.
Yeah,
Everybody's going to be different.
I'm very
So,
interested in data engineering and data science because after I learned all these skills, I got one clarity is data engineering. I have whatever I learned, all the skills is useful for applying for data engineering.
mhm, yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm giving so much. I'm taking so much time.
It's good.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to another question in the chat. Chris asked, if you're stuck on an advanced coding problem, what are some techniques you go about in resolving it so that you don't get frustrated?
Walk away. Seriously, walk away. I have gone through, oh dear God, I don't know how many designs. Asynchronous system design is really hard. So that's in the code. I'm talking like up here a level. Um, but just like walking away, giving myself a breather, say I'm going to come to this at another time. It's really important to me, but damn it, like I can't figure this thing out. No one says it has to be done right then and there. I'm assuming this is extracurricular and not in front of some proctor at your interview. So let me preface it by saying that. But yeah, I find that just walking away, hey, going and getting a quick drink of water, or walking around the block, hell, even answering emails for half an hour, is still just enough energy that my brain kind of diverts, and then it can come back, and the problem reveals itself. Um, Reading too, but yeah, time.
Tina asked, you mentioned testing would be a good place to get some experience in software.
Hmm.
What's needed to get a testing job without experience in it?
I haven't. That's a great question. Let me say I threw that out there because it was like, wow, I can get this. I think just rudimentary understanding of those things, right? What am I looking for? It's requirements. I think it's less, let's say if you get into um testing with, again, C sharp or a particular stack, that's helpful, but I can guarantee you um that the lady who is doing our testing has not much experience with the .NET framework, probably nothing with React. And it really is all about, here are the requirements, and then making sure those requirements are filled, and then just kind of listening in and saying, hey, what was the outcome of that? Like, huh, okay. So we were posting the wrong stuff to the wrong endpoint. Cool. Hmm. And then being curious enough to look and say, hey, what did that look like? What was that JSON object behind the scenes that was, oh, hey, look. So you start seeing like what data is being revealed, training yourself up on, the interchange between the app and the back end. And again, feeding yourself, being curious, I think is the most important thing as an engineer, as a scientist, just like, huh, what makes that work? Um, we just went to Disney the couple of weeks ago because it's the winter, and why not? Cold sucks. And I was just thinking around, like, we noticed that they take pictures on some of the rides, and they were coming into my wife's little Disney app, and we're like, how the heck do they know this? But like, I'm the engineer, so I'm going, huh, I wonder what their IT infrastructure looks like. I wonder if everything's on-prem or in the cloud. And then I wonder, like, how did they get that here? Was it like geolocation? Did they do some kind of like, yeah, image thing with PyTorch, or do they, do they see me here and they say, oh, that's that guy? So being curious, just hunkering down, feeding yourself. I hope that answered the question. Where
Great. Next question is from Hannah. How would you go about the job search process if you do not have a degree?
if you don't have a degree, so it's been said, and I don't mean to discourage anybody with this, there's like the 10,000 hour rule, and then there's the degree. Um, I don't, I don't know what FANG companies do, but I can tell you for a fact, at my previous company, International Paper, we looked at folks coming out of code camps. Even here, one of the girls that was in a code camp that worked with me at International Paper is actually here. She's doing very well. She's in a product that's really just TypeScript, right? So don't sell yourself short in terms of like, it has nothing to do with degree. It has everything to do with, and what I've looked on interviews was like, are they hungry? Can they feed themselves? Because like, tech chops are good, but there's a lot of smart people who have had the exact same problems in tech, and post their steps out of the mud, if you will, of a particular problem. So please don't get that in your mind that this is a limiting factor. I did it. I didn't apply to Microsoft at first, right? I still haven't applied to Microsoft for different reasons. But yeah, don't sell yourself short. You're good enough if you're hungry enough.
Thank you so much. Our next question is, let's see here. Yeah. Yeah, this is kind of this isn't a question, but Rhonda made an interesting comment. Most of the jobs I was looking at 2 years ago, but wasn't ready for are all getting laid off now. What are your thoughts on the job market these days, Sean? Do you see signs of these layoffs slowing? Do you see the signs of hiring starting again? Like, you noticing any trends from where you stand?
Yeah. I'm giggling. Devin's famished. That's good, man. Stay hungry. Um, let's see. I I do. I think a couple of interesting things like macroeconomically, right, is we're set up to start seeing the what is it, prime rate come down. They're going to start pulling what am I thinking about? Interest rates. Yeah, they're going to start the interest rates are going to start to fall, which frees up companies to produce more, which requires more humans, which I think it's coming back. I think it is not going to come back really quick. It's not going to be another, 2020, 2021, where we're just absorbing everybody. I think that was actually again, a big push by AWS. They kind of signaled it, the Great Migration. They approached me, and I'm like, ugh, okay, sure, why not? But then they didn't get back to me on what exactly they didn't like, which was annoying as well. Um, but hey, it happens, and I'm in a better place for it, right? Like I did not get fed that poison. Um, but now that things are starting to return to normal, I believe things are going to start to return to normal, and those jobs are going to come back.
Next question. Let's see, we've got time for probably like 2 more questions. This is from Chris. How many hours a day do you code? And what's your favorite IDE?
Yeah. So, it's started to slack off a little bit, but I'm still in the code probably 40% of the time. I do code reviews for my guys. Uh, and excuse me if that's insensitive. I use guys for everybody. Um, but I do that. I kind of grew up on Visual Studio because it did so much. And at this point in time in my career, I'm kind of like, do I move to Writer? Visual Studio Code's pretty cool. I did Java development at one point in time, and I absolutely hated Eclipse. So if I still have to do anything there and look at Java, I'm still going to Visual Studio Code. Um, let's see. Was there anything else? Yeah, that's it. The VS Code's come a long, long way. I like it.
All right, Tanya, I think we kind of covered this. Why was there a mass layoff in tech? Do you have anything else to add to that?
Nope. I think people got greedy. People got hungry.
Mm,
Companies got hungry and then realized, it's just a lever to pull to get back to sustainability, profitability.
okay.
Sad.
Yeah, I know. It was a weird, very unsustainable year there. Oscar asks, what's your database of choice?
What kind of database? So there's like RDBMSs. So we're going through this right now, right? So .NET Stack, Azure has all this cool stuff that just kind of flows in. It's like the little sugary goodness that they hook you on, little crack, if you will. I know that's probably not the best term or thing to say, but it's just that addictive quality, right? Um, so they got us on SQL. It's easy to manage. It's also not portable, not cloud portable. So here comes a place like Google, right? And they're like, hey, if you want to come over to our platform, we'll save you a couple $1,000,000 a year. You're like, oh, that's awesome. Ooh, how much would it be to like bring SQL over? About 2 to 3 times as much. Excuse me. So what we're looking at right now is like Postgres has probably been my favorite RDBMS, relational database management service. And if we're talking about document databases, I've tried Raven. I haven't tried Raven for like production use. It's always been Mongo or something like that. But frankly, Postgres has a really cool thing with how they structure or index their JSON columns. So if you want to do kind of document database stuff, that's out there. If you're interested, here's something interesting too. We do a ton of what is called, I'm sorry, where is my chat? Come on, chat. Sorry.
They put it under more. They just did like a redo
Yep.
UI. So if you go to the 3 dots over more, it'll give you chat.
There we go. Yeah. So I just posted something here. This is a .NET application. And what its goal is to service the event sourcing paradigm. But what it uses behind the scenes is Postgres. So if you want to like deconstruct that and look at it, if it's just a curiosity to you, what either of those are, how it uses the JSON object type, or more about C#, or more about event sourcing, you could probably dig into that.
Beautiful,
There you
thank
go.
you. Well, that brings us pretty much right to the end. I think we got to most of the questions. I think there was 1 or 2 side questions that we didn't get to, but I just want to say thank you to everyone for sharing your questions, for sharing your experiences and putting yourself out there. And thank you so much to Sean for sharing your experience and insights. It really does mean a lot, to us here at the Onramp community to get into the mind of somebody who is in the industry, who has thoughts from sort of like the other side of the job search and the other side of interviewing. It's greatly appreciated. We're very grateful that you spent some time with us today.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Feel free to reach out. And if you can explain to me like what your stance or position is, I can try to tailor an answer to you specifically. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. I hope everybody got something out of it. Thank you.
Devin is asking if you're open to connections on LinkedIn. Can people request you?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of where I was leading that. I just didn't name LinkedIn. So feel free, please.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Have a beautiful Wednesday, and we will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.